Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. It depends where you are in the world, but welcome here. Welcome to the Global Science Café from the Czech Centres. My name is Michael Lonsborough, and it's my great privilege to be with you here all today. And a little bit about Global Science Czech Centres Café. It's a series of popular science lectures or debates, conversations that we're having with the best Czech scientists and innovators, economists and other professionals. And it's organized by the Czech Centres. And the Czech Centres is a branch of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic. And as such, it's a core instrument in their foreign policy and international diplomacy. And the main idea is to promote and to support a wide range of Czech cultural and technological achievements. So from Czech art and the creative industries, all the way through Czech scientific discoveries and innovations. And at present, the Czech Centres, it has a wide network. We're streaming out to 25 branches across 3 continents. So welcome again to today's program. And well, today it's actually, we're celebrating a centenary because it was 100 years ago, more or less to the day, that the Czech author Karel Čapek first premiered his play, a science fiction drama called Rossum's Universal Robots, or shortened to RUR. That later became translated to English and took the world by storm, became very popular in Britain, in America and other places, and it has since influenced many of the recent Hollywood blockbuster movies, sci-fi movies, and indeed many TV series. A highly influential play that brought us the word robot, amongst other things, but it also has outlined a number of scientific and philosophical questions that scientists and philosophers still debate and work on to this very day. In the play, we see the generation of the formulation of these robots based on organic material, not on cogs or moving parts and mechanics. And eventually, these robots who produce this utopian lifestyle for lazy humans who no longer have to do too much work, it ends up rather going a bit sour. We're going to look at some of the trends and the major themes from this play. And with me to do this, I have with me here, I've got 3 of my guests. I have Jitka Čejková, Tomáš Mikulov, and Jana Horáková. And they're here because Jitka Čejková actually has just published this book, Robot 100, and then in Czech it's 100 rozumů, which roughly translates to 100 perspectives. And it's 100 perspectives on the original play by Karel Čapek. And this has been published by the University of Chemical Technology here in Prague, just around the corner from where we're sitting at the moment. And Jitka Čejková not only is the editor of this book, which collects contributions from international scientists and other experts, Czech and international. But so Jitka Čejková not only is the editor of this book, but she actually actively works in chemical robotics, or indeed is a chemical engineer dealing with chemical robots, which we're going to be learning more about. Also with me is Jana Horáková as well, and she is an expert on the play itself and generally the context of the theatrical performance of that play. And also Tomáš Mikulov, he is working in artificial intelligence and is also a contributor to this more recent book. So welcome, Jitka, Jana, and Tomáš. Thank you for coming. Right, let's begin a bit. I want to create a context in which the original play was formed, was written. So could we start maybe with you, Jana? Could you tell us a bit about the author, Karel Čapek, who he was, and what was the context in which this play was developed?
Yeah, Karel Čapek is one of the main writers of Czechoslovakia or of Czech Republic. He was close friend of the first president of the very young new state, Czechoslovakia. And he was a writer of novels, short stories, dramas, and whole his life he was also journalist. The early stage of his work as a writer. He cooperated with his brother Joseph. With him, he was in close relationship whole life long, and they were influencing each other. In Čapek's work, we can find different influences of the time. It's the peak of industrial revolution and the belief in technological progress, which we can find in even in the architecture, in preferences in aesthetics, for example, in functionalism, in futurism, and it's
So this is a man who, if I'm not mistaken, he used to have a club, a Friday afternoon or Friday evening club.
Yeah, Fridays guys.
Fridays guys.
Yeah.
And so this was a group of intellectuals from the political elites. So he'll be exposed as a still a youthful writer and journalist. He'll be exposed to all sorts of conversations and ideas about politics, about economy, and the rest of it.
Yeah, and he was really like internationally known intellectual representing Czech Republic, very close to president. He wrote also the interviews with or conversation with Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk, and he was active also internationally to promote the young Czechoslovakia. And in his thinking, he was influenced with or by pragmatic philosophy, the Anglo-Saxon context. He was influenced by Cubism and futurism in futurism in the visual, but also visual art, but also in the writings. And what I liked the most on his style, that he was, I think, first of all, he was a journalist. He liked to comment, to find facts and to comment on different subjects, and his comments were very sharp and intellectually sharp, and very often there were some like wit or joke in it. He found there some. He turned them into humor. Yeah, and I find it like the highest level of intellectual ability. This is visible especially in their juvenilias. It's called juvenilias. There are short stories he wrote with his brother, and they are very like intellectual play. You can see how they enjoy the writing of this play, of the short stories together. And even in these short stories, you can find several cases where they wrote about artificial man. It was Levantine inspired by the clockwork androids of the 18th century. Even Jacques Droz is one of the figures. Joseph Čapek wrote short story named Drunker. It was like double of the engineer he made to go for dating instead of him, because he was so too busy to go out. And the closest short story to the RUR topic we are here for is The System, where there are artificial workers called operarius utilis ripratoni. The ripraton is the owner of the factory and the inventor of these artificial workers. And what is interesting, that these workers are also organic, and they are in fact made from man in a special educational treatment, reduced to only work or to be productive in the working process.
So he seems, even outside the play RUR, he seems to be very interested in this idea of increasing industrialization, the changing of the human being or humanity towards a merger between the automatic or the automated and the very humanistic aspects of our
It
being.
seems that he was afraid of humanity in the age of the machine, that there was so much everybody admiring the technological progress, the speed, the power, the rationality of the progress, the effectivity of machine. And for even artists were celebrating the machines, the beauty of the like functioning machine, and they put it even like over the man.
I see. So you're painting a picture for me now of a highly intellectual person with an extremely wide and good network of friends and sort of that can inspire him in his intellectual thinking, and somebody who's observing this very rapid change after the First World War in this new republic in the center of Europe, which is the sort of the thrust towards industrialization and all the related aspects, all the influences on the zeitgeist and the culture of the day. And then, so he then decides to sort of reflect upon some of his musings in this play that he writes. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk a bit about, tell me a bit about the main themes that are going through the play.
Yeah. The main thing, we can find it in even already in the title, the RUR, Rosums Universal Robots. It's not in fact the robot as a character, but it's a factory placed on the island. So we can say that it's utopia, the factory utopia, where on the island, in the isolation, there live only human in position of directors and the robots as the workers of the factory. All other informations come from outside the island, that there are other robots because they are selling the robots all around the world. And in the factory, we can see, as in the laboratory, the condition of the human-machine interaction in different aspects. But mostly the human is under control over these humanoid machines called robots. And they slowly change them. They add some, they call it nervous system. Firstly, to be able to feel pain when they, for example, put their hand into the machine. So they take care to not broken themselves. And later on, the emotional response to the world increase. Even they got more self-awareness, and there comes the danger of the revolution of these robots over their masters, and the old story of the man and the artificial creature, and the revolution of the artificial creature over the man just happen in the RUR too. That's why Karl Čapek said that that robots are the golems of the modern age. It's the one interpretation. And what is different from the golem of the ancient ages, that it's not only one servant, but it's like massive like series of the robots. They are all over the world. They replace the human in every possible profession, and they suddenly change the position in the system. You can imagine it as a chess. When you play chess, there are the humans and the robots, and they take all the positions slowly. And at the end of the play, when we see the humankind is over, there are only robots, and they are searching for the secret of life to be able to reproduce. And there is only one couple of robots, Helena and Primus, left, and they fall in love. And there is it looks like a biblical scene that the Adam and Eve are going away from the Eden to start a new
a whole new chapter, a whole new generation, a
whole
new
new
sort of species
generation.
almost.
Yeah. But we don't know if they are like men already, or if they are the new new creatures.
Whether now that they're able to love and be loved, whether that has made them, that has turned them into actual human beings, or not.
But
so,
I think, sorry.
Yeah, no, but listening to your description, you can see there the influences that Čapek is using from, almost ancient playwriting or Greek playwriting. You can see the sort of the tragedies, the love, the aspects, the heroes, the villains, and then also the references to Gollum or like a Frankenstein, something, a creation of a human being that eventually takes over or destroys the creator, the human itself. And all these paranoid feelings that many human beings have, I think, inherent to us. So he's playing with that. But also, so thank you very much for that description. Let's talk a bit about the how he uses that system, how he borrows these sort of elements from more classical playwriting to talk about the time. So let's, for example, if you're one of the, and this stretches into the current day, where we're thinking about how automated devices or artificial intelligence could potentially outperform, and does indeed in many cases outperform human ability, and is beginning to replace us in various job places, and the job market is changing because of that. So I think that brings the relevance of his thinking to today. So before we get on to your book, Jitka, maybe you could expand a bit on what Jan has already said, Tomáš, you too, and tell me a bit about your sort of personal relationship with the play and how that has influenced your thinking about what you do in your profession.
So I read the book when I was young student, but I have forgotten the story. And I read it again when I started to be PhD student in František Štěpánek's group here at the University of Chemistry and Technology in Prague, because I was the member of Chemical Robotics Laboratory. And the aim of this laboratory was to synthesize some chemical robots, which are the particles that have similar properties as living cells have. And when I had presentation at the conference, I always had the slide, like the introduction, that we are working on chemical robots, and our robots are much closer to the original idea of Čapek. Čapek invented the word robot, and in his play the robots were made from kind of colloidal jelly that even a dog wouldn't eat. It's the translation of the Czech chrchl koloidního rosolu, který by ani pes nesežral. And our particles were much closer to the robots that we know today, because if you say robot, everyone think about metal constructions or mechanical constructions, and that's why I started to talk more and more about RUR and Čapek, and I was involved.
So Čapek was very much ahead of his time in many ways, and he's thinking about if there would be a chance for a real takeover of robots, then they would have to be based on some sort of organic, plastic, flexible, chemical basis, as we are, in order to be able to evolve and develop, rather than being set in stone, mechanical. Of course, electronical wasn't around at the time, but a mechanical object which had to be programmed. So that's very much ahead of its time, and you're indeed working on steps coming towards this ultimate goal. So that link is obvious then to your knowledge of and appreciation of Čapek's play. How about you, Tomáš?
Well, from my point of view, I read that play something like 2 years ago, and it was actually very interesting. I feel that often it's kind of like oversimplified, because from my point of view, it's not really central to Čapek's play, all these details, whether like the robots are doing this or that, but at least for me personally, it's more like some like thinking about where can the technological progress take us as humanity, and what can it lead to, and whether it's robots or some self-driving cars or whatever. I think that's a bit secondary. So actually, one example that I have that actually the technology can become dangerous because it's hard to predict all the outcomes is, for example, in the last century there was this huge problem with the ozone layer, where actually the humanity almost destroyed that by producing chemicals that were unexpectedly dangerous. And I think that's at least for me the real issue with technology. It's making our lives easier. It's making our society richer, but there's this hidden possible huge cost that is very hard to predict, and that's actually the warning for me from Čapek's play, that we can actually construct something that we believe is helping us, and then it's gonna take over slowly over time, and it's actually gonna like hurt us as humanity in the long term in unexpected ways. There's, for example, plastics all over the oceans, even in our bodies now, some microplasts, and we don't really know what it's gonna cause. Maybe nothing. Maybe it's gonna kill us in 100 years. You know, like that's in my opinion like the real message that the technology is helpful, but we should be looking at both sides of the coin. There's this positive side, but also like there's this hidden danger, and we should not underestimate it.
Linked to that hidden danger you described very nicely and eloquently just now, I think is also I felt in Čapek's play that there's this idea, this concept that at the beginning, this sort of utopia where we can sit back and let a robot do the work for us, and everything becomes very cheap because labor costs go down so appreciably. The robots don't need to sleep, or they want for nothing, so we can just take all the benefits. Eventually, the humans realize they lose a meaning to life, and then eventually they lose their ability in reproduction. So, and in some ways, we can see trends really happening in this. There are now very much talk about, if I go to a contemporary conference on AI, for example, you hear lectures being given about what's going to happen when we increasingly use robotics or algorithms to take the place of so much work. I mean, so much work can be done far more efficiently now by an algorithm or a robot rather than humankind. And what will that eventually lead to? And does it mean that our destiny is just become, we're born to consume and no more? And if we just consume and do not create, do we then necessarily go into despair and depression and eventually lose abilities to, say, even to socialize and reproduce? What do you think about that as a major thread of the play? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that I think that it was a really good point that the danger or the hidden side of the technological progress is really we should have on our minds. Even I don't think if we are able to find what is on the other side of the technological progress, but definitely the concept of creativity, or how it happens that something is invented, that's something I think that it's still realm of humankind. We don't believe that machines are, or these artificial creatures are able to be really creative. We don't believe they are able to enjoy, for example, play. We don't believe they are able to invent something from the scratch, not just like go through the database of data. They are much better in it. But to really come with some new idea, they are not so good in it. But what I think that Čapek was warning, that we are not evaluating this ability of man, that we much more evaluate the ability to remember or to manage the data, or how to say, to have a control over the data, than to write some new poem, for example. And
so you're arguing for that we have to be concentrating perhaps our educational systems on creation, that we have to look to be more creative, and that could sort of give you a justification for your life, that could fill you with a feeling of.
But of course we can be creative with in cooperation with that new technologies. I think it would even like boost our creativity if we are able to understand them, because it's said that maybe the new elite is not anymore someone who can speak Latin or read Latin, but someone who is able to understand how it works, and
or write an algorithm that can translate Latin real time to English, whatever it might be.
Yeah. So the creativity is changing also. That we should not maybe think about creativity like we are drawing the oil painting, but how to use all these technologies in a creative way, not just to reproduce the old ideas.
But Tomasz, aren't we already living with our robots, our mobile telephones, and increasingly becoming more and more dependent on them for answers that are influencing our decision making? So whether it's where we're going to buy dinner, or where we're going to buy this product or that product or whatever product, this idea that we're becoming this consumer, everything's been made through an augmentation of our telephones. We're going through this robot, as it were. So, I mean, do you think this is going to continue, or are we going to become more and more dependent on technology and artificial intelligence? Not just for that, but ultimately, if we extrapolate, will we begin to then be mainly interested in making friends just with robots rather than having social interaction? Will we fall in love with robots and algorithms? How do you see it panning out?
Well, that's many questions, and there's like multiple scenarios that we can think of. What can I say? I think that one part of the story here is the work that we have to do to make a living, to basically survive in the world. And I see that the Industrial Revolution did actually make lives for people much easier. Like if you think of it, for example, in like how many people have to work in the fields? I think 200 years ago, before the Industrial Revolution, it was maybe like 90% of the population did have to work 6 days in a week, basically 12 hours a day. They were just in the fields doing all these kind of manual works. And now, if you look, for example, in the US, I think it's less than 1% of the population is actually working in the agriculture. It's actually this work is now done by the robots, by the machines. Well, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? You can say it's a good thing because the society gets richer, the work is done automatically. We can grow like a lot of food very cheaply, and then actually we can be having a much easier jobs, spend much less time in jobs. We can create new jobs where we just basically just post some videos to YouTube and make money out of it. So I think actually the whole society is getting richer. There's of course this negative side, because people don't do these kind of jobs anymore. Then they actually get physically much weaker than they used to be. So now you have things that didn't exist 200 years ago, like for example the gyms. Like how many people go now to just live mindlessly some weights,
to do the kind of work you would be doing in the field.
Which like 200 years ago would sound like a joke, because people were doing these things to earn money. Now you are actually paying money to move some heavy objects with no purpose. I think it would sound ridiculous to people just like 200 years ago. I think this is something that can happen maybe in the future. As we will be getting richer and richer as a society, people will be doing, from our current point of view, more and more like ridiculous jobs that make basically no sense, but they will be able to afford it because the values will be created by these automated processes like the machines. So I think that the future will look strange to us from our current point of view, but to the future people it will just look normal.
Well, that very much sounds too much like a future that Čapek was thinking about from my perspective. That the reason is going to the gym's not about just the physical benefits of that, but also the mental benefits of that. I think we humans, our physical performance is very much related to our mental health. And so one can envisage that a future in which if you do delegate all your tasks and work to robots and machines, then it's going to have a huge impact on our mental health, which I think is also a big theme through this, which is then linked to these ideas of despair, and then eventually we no longer even begin to replicate ourselves and form those human relationships. Okay, so I think we've painted a picture now of this. This play has a number of themes which is sort of immune to erosion from time, that are relevant to this day, that touch on economics, that touch on our work structures, that touch on issues of mental health, that touch on personal relationships, etc., etc. So let's now, Jitke, if I can turn to you. So we have this play. It's 100 years old, a centenary. It's still relevant. What made you do this?
Now we discussed so many topics that Čapek already outlined in his play, and I think that because we have this 100th anniversary of RUR, I decided to celebrate it somehow. And a few years ago, I offered to organize Artificial Life conference in Prague to celebrate this 100th anniversary. And because this artificial life field, it is not well known, so maybe I can slightly introduce it. It is the community of researchers, and one of the definition could be like that biology studies the life as we know it, and artificial life focuses on life as it could be. So artificial life researchers, they ask the question similar to Čapek in his play already. For example, in the play in RUR, there is the mad scientist Rozum, and he synthesized in the laboratory the some compound which behaved like living matter, and now we have the researchers in synthetic biology and or researchers, they focus on origin of life, and they are synthesizing some protocells or some compounds with properties similar to living matter. And there are also other questions related to artificial life field, like consciousness or artificial intelligence, intelligence of humans, and so on. And I decided not only to organize this artificial life conference in Prague, which is shortly called like A-Life, artificial life, A-Life, and also to publish some book, not only to have some event for researchers, not only the conference, but also give the chance to public to read RUR again and to see how researchers and other people see display after 100 years. So I asked my colleagues, friends, and other people to read RUR, because mainly foreigners, they had no idea that this play exists. And then to comment on it.
I think many of us know that robot as a word comes from Karel Čapek, but then it finishes there, right? So this is definitely an inspiration to read the actual play and then gain these perspectives in the modern day.
And as I mentioned, in the conferences, I always said, please read this play, it's really interesting. The word robot comes from this play, and everyone was like, yes, yes, yes. But then the moment came, and I asked them, please read the play and write me your view. What do you think about this play? You were also invited to contribute to this book. So 100 people responded to me, and then this book, Robot 100, was published in Czech at University of Chemistry and Technology in Prague. But 2/3 of the authors are foreigners, so there will be also the English version. It will be published in fall 22 in MIT Press. This book is still under preparation. It will be slightly shorter. There will be not all 100 contributions, and it will be slightly changed. And what I want to...
Sorry, no, I wanted to ask you something about some of these contributions, whether you could... There's many there for us to get the book and to read up on, but what first comes into your mind? We've discussed some of these interesting themes developed in the play. Tell us a bit about some of the perspectives of these contributions in your book. Do many people think that some of the fears that Čapek was developing or talking about, thinking about, have they come to fruition? Were they, or was it quite the opposite? Has it been the case that it was all exaggerated? Tell us a bit about those contributions.
Interesting is that we have 100 contributors, and there is no consensus like that everyone agrees that it is danger to have a lot of robots or AI. So some of them are against, some of them think that the human beings will live in heaven because the robots can do everything instead of us. But the contributions are not only from the scientific perspectives. There are also contributions from athletes or writers or artists. So, for example, there is the view on on robots of Czech athletes Adam and Denisa Helcelec, because they ask the questions if the robots will participate at Olympic Games in 100 years. And we think, why? But similar question was 100 years ago, like if women can go to Olympics, and it was also for still crazy question for some people. So who knows what will be in 100 years? So also the question of robots and female and male representatives in the society are also open in this book.
What about, Tomasz, in your opinion? Do you think we'll be seeing soon robotic Olympic Games? I mean, I know that on the internet you can certainly find robot wars or whatever, where people are making these robots which try to attack each other and see what wins. Were much the same as a sort of gladiators fighting in ancient Rome. But do you see? Are we close to the development of AI systems that will compete in such for entertainment?
Well, certainly if it would be entertaining enough and if there would be enough viewers, then we would have these Olympics. There are actually competitions that are similar to this. Maybe it's even called Robotics Olympics. I'm not even sure, but I know that for many years there has been going some competition for like building robots that can play some kind of like soccer, like football. And sure, like it's like a nice technical goal that you are trying to build these robots that can play the game as well as possible. Well, I'd say that if the general public would find this interesting to watch, then we would definitely see much more of it. It's a question basically whether it's going to be entertaining enough.
This is driven by us humans. So
Yeah.
so I mean, there's limited resources for research, there's limited resources for development, and so that research and development into artificial intelligence and robots is it being determined then by sort of public needs? What are the primary ultimate priority goals?
I have just a comment to this soccer competition. It's called RoboCup, and the ex-president of this RoboCup is Daniel Polani, and he also contributed to the book Robot 100. Yeah.
So from the people writing in the book and others that you know, and then from your own experiences, why are we in the sort of the cutting edge of research and development? Why are we producing robots now? Is their main aim to look after the elderly? I mean, I remember seeing many programs about, robots are big in Japan, and one of the drivers there is to create, robots that can look after the elderly. Or are we driving it to provide robots for entertainment or for pleasure? Or for or is it mainly about manufacturing
the humanoid robots, right? Because otherwise, the typical robots nowadays are in industry. Basically, you have factories where a lot of tasks can be like automatized, so you actually don't need the human workers. You save the money, and that's the main driving force for robotics these days. That's actually where the money is. And the task that you set are also like an interesting task, like taking care of elderly people, for example. But from my point of view, it is like a very, very smallish compared to like the industrial robotics.
And also writing in your book are people who are looking into the chemical side of these things, which goes back to Čapek's original, what would be the material to make these robots. So tell me a bit about where you are now with your research work.
My research is now slightly, let's say,
taking a
sleeping.
back seat because of the editorial
because
work.
I spent a lot of time with this book preparation, and now I am organizing a live conference, which will be virtual, but originally the plan was to have it here in Prague. So basically my research focuses on droplets, and I call these droplets as liquid robots because the droplets that we study have some similar properties as living organisms have. For example, if we have a cell or insect, they have the ability to feel some chemicals in the environment, and follow the gradients of some chemicals, for example, to go towards the food or run away from the poison. And similarly, our droplets are able to move in the environment, and this movement is based on chemical signals. For example, you can find my YouTube movie where the decanol droplet solves the maze just because of signals of salt in the maze. Or the
So it's responding to its environment.
yeah.
So you're gradually producing chemical molecular systems that are responding to the environment in much way as a living organism might.
Yeah. Or as the living cells can change their shape, our droplets are able to change the shape independent on conditions. Or we can observe some interesting collective behavior in the populations of droplets. So that's what I am working on. I am playing with droplets, and we call them liquid robots, because they are not artificial cells. They have really only a few properties similar to living organisms. That's I call them robots. And because I am Czech, so I like to use this word.
Okay, maybe if I can pin the two of you down now, from a that sort of chemical perspective, and then from the artificial intelligence perspective, yes or no, are we human beings becoming obsolete?
I don't know.
You have to put your money down. You have to put your money. Will Chapek's original idea, will it become a reality?
As I said, also in the book we can see several contrasts and something which we agree. For example, if we I agree that we can have robots because they can help us with many things. For example, in the laboratory, they can do experiments instead of us. So it's great to have them. So I like the idea. But on the other side, there is the huge drawback that humans will be too lazy. They don't use their brain. Now people are at home, and instead of learning new things, they are just everything has both sides.
So yes and no. You're saying
I,
yes and no. So
I'm saying
you're not
yes
gonna put
and
your,
no. I cannot
so the book
say
says
that
yes and no,
I'm
and you say.
against,
How about you, Tomasz? Are you willing to say a definite yes or a definite no? Is the human species becoming obsolete?
Well, it's not possible to answer such a question with one single word. So, from my point of view, basically, we are gonna evolve. We are gonna change using the technology that we are developing, the same way as the people who used to live 10,000 years ago, before the agriculture actually became normal. They don't live anymore. Like we are a completely different society, and these people are basically gone. And the same way in the future, people will be different from us. But that's kind of like a normal evolution. Like we will be different. We will have much better abilities in many ways.
Maybe we'll all become scientists and artists because we won't need to have to worry about resources, money, food, drink.
That
We can just
may be the case, and artists and professional players of computer games and whatever things, that you basically see that there are new jobs that are being already created now, when people are doing things that would not be recognized as jobs 100 years ago, but now they are completely normal because the society became rich enough. So actually this there's this whole area called transhumanism, where actually people are thinking about what humans can actually evolve into when they merge with the technology that we are creating. So I think that yes or no, that's like two short answers. So I think that we are gonna evolve as human beings into something that's hard to predict at this moment. We will be different. Our abilities will be very likely better, unless of course we will destroy ourselves using the technology, which is also like an option. Then there's the question: what is more likely, whether we will continue evolving into these perfect beings from our current point of view, or whether we are gonna destroy ourselves sooner. It's hard to tell. You can actually look even at the last century, and we were not that far from actually destroying the whole civilization. There was the US against Soviet Union with all these thousands of nuclear warheads. If they would just fire at each other, then there would be this nuclear winter, and actually the life maybe would be gone from the whole planet. Who knows? So I think that as we are getting more and more powerful when it comes to technology, we are also like having a much bigger chance of actually destroying ourselves, either intentionally or unintentionally, as I was mentioning the ozone layer. So in my view, it's more like a question whether we will like sooner either destroy ourselves or whether we will sooner get to the point where we actually become smart enough that we will know how to avoid these dangers of technology.
Jana, listening to these two speak about their sort of professional perspectives on these themes developed by Čapek, tell me a bit about the conclusions that Čapek comes to in his play, and how relevant it is what we just heard now is to the play itself, or is the play still relevant to what these two have just been talking about now? In your perspective?
I think that the play is still relevant, and I think that it will be in the future too, and that's because Karl Čapek let the audience, the readers, the human to answer the questions we are asking here. He didn't give us simple answer to the question if the robot is danger for us or if it's just the next step of human evolution. He just left it open to let us think about it. When I was listening to colleagues, I was thinking about if we as a humankind feel obsolete. I think maybe it will also depends on it if we feel that this Earth, planet Earth, the nature, the other species need us. If we feel that somebody else needs us to be here, or if we are just some creature that maybe should be somehow eliminated. And I think it's also important if we will spend money to evolve technology for entertainment or for increasing profits, or
I agree that I think that's a good point. That
ecology, for example.
That I think that's a good point, that we're now beginning as a species to really consider: are we a net benefit to our planet, or are we a net drain on our planet?
And I think it's really, and we can use the technology to help not only to us but to the whole ecosystem.
Yes.
And I think we more and more are aware of that it's not like humankind that should survive, and other nature and other I don't know energies should be spent to let us survive, but we are dependent.
Yes. Well, I think that's a lovely place to draw a temporary conclusion at the moment, that the original play, 100 years old now, and Jitka's book with all your contributions and many others, is a catalyst to us thinking very carefully about whether we as a species are a net benefit to our planet or not. And so thank you very much so far for all that you said so far. And we've got another remaining 12 minutes or so, and I'd like to turn to some questions we're getting from the audience who are following us from various countries around the world. So first of all, there's a question from Dan who asks, do you think that Čapek's vision from RUR is coming true, and will we be smarter than the characters in the play when handling AI? So that sort of links into roughly what we were just talking about just now, but this is specific to your understanding of the characters in the play and how they handled their power over the AI. Do you think we're going to be smarter? Who would like to start? Tomáš, what do you think?
Well, I can maybe just comment on the last part of the question, that AI actually today is somewhat like an overhyped term, because we don't have intelligent machines. The artificial intelligence today is like often sold as like some magical tool, but it's basically like statistics over large data sets. That's basically what machine learning is about, and that's what actually AI means when you look into the products of companies like Google and Microsoft and Facebook and Apple and whoever is using the AI shortcut to promote their products.
Let me change then that question a little bit. Do you think that the people who are currently leading AI, whether it be the Googles or whomever, are they doing us, in your opinion, are they doing a smart job? Are they doing a good job? Are we got the correct direction? There's a lot of discussion at the moment whether are they goodies or baddies? I mean, what people who were only several years ago were very much almost idolized are now becoming sort of rather villains.
That's what I was trying to explain. That I think that like both sides of your like evaluation are like too radical. Like I don't think that they should have been idealized as much as they were, and I don't think that there are villains who are trying to like invoke some demons or whatever was Elon Musk saying about them. So again, like AI today is more like applied statistics to large data sets. It's basically like bunch of computer algorithms. For example, we had a discussion about like, say, data sorting algorithms, whether they are going to destroy the humanity or not. Nobody would care about such things. People talk about AI dangers because there's this artificial intelligence. It basically seems to be dangerous. You have like the intelligence, the thing that actually people value the most. That's making the difference between animals and humans. It's our intelligence, and they just feel that something is attacking them, some black box machine that they don't understand, that it's competing over resources with them. But that's again like that has been just a story that some startups used to make a lot of money while having no product, just having some fairy tales. I don't know, DeepMind is a nice example. You don't have any money, you suddenly make billions of dollars, and just because you were just trying to scare people by coming with some wild stories. Now it's kind of backfiring to some of these people because they are seen as creating some dangerous technology. But if we just forget about the hype, that then AI is basically just a bunch of like mathematical models. And again, like who was afraid 15 years ago about some mathematical models that we were using? It's just computers.
But to be smart about this, for me, what that means is all about the goal. So is the goal to make as much, to maximize profits, to make as much money as possible? Or will the goal be to be as big a benefit to the whole planet? And would that be a good way to gauge how smart we're handling and do we believe that we're going towards, and what do you think Čapek was trying to say? Yes.
I think the problem in RUR was that they had the recipe how to construct the robots, and they had only one copy, which was burned. So now we have open science, or we can share the paper. So, and we make the we can store the information. So this is better now in comparison with the approach in RUR. So yeah, that we don't have only one recipe, and after damage of it, everything is over.
The secret formula, which if destroyed is lost to everybody.
Yeah,
like the destruction of the library at Alexandria, where everything's then lost.
Yeah, but maybe I would say that where I find the danger of the AI is that application in that social media. We all are communicating online on the social media, and the algorithms which control our or mapping our behavior and are able to control us, remotely control us, what we will buy, what we will read, and how we will vote. I think it's big danger. It's not neutral as you describe it. Of course, it's neutral when you technically describe the AI, but I think that we use it in the way that we make people addicted, that we manipulate with, like their free will is really in danger. And I think that it will really depend on spread of literacy about the machines, how they work. That was why I was talking about the critical thinking, about the spread of knowledge about the programming, how it works generally. That black box which entertain us mostly and gives us only information we want to read. How it works. And I think it's really important. Otherwise, we will be much more.
But I feel that we're gradually integrating ourselves into these devices, and that they've become an augmented form of our own selves. So it's almost now inescapable. We have merged into that sort of, AI robotic world in many regards. But let's move on to another question. Will robots ever be able to learn to feel or have emotions? So now, in the play, of course, a key aspect to successfully, eventually, to reproduce is love. And you mentioned, I think, Jitka, that previously in the play, that they had to develop a pain mechanism to stop them from self-harm or destruction. But eventually, it develops all the way to love. So let's talk a bit about that? You know, what are your views? What are the views from the book? Has anybody written about emotional side and development of emotions in AI?
Yeah, there are several contributions which are related to this topic. There are topics, the chapters which are focusing on the relationships between human beings and robots. There are even topics related to sex bots. There are also the topics related if the robots have the abilities to compose the music or feel the music. Even some contributors are constructing the robots. For example, Takashi Ikegami from Tokyo has the robot Alter, and it is able to control the opera. And mainly Japanese contributors or researchers, they look at robots in different way than us. They usually try to give them some emotions and feelings, and they think that the robots really feel something, even if the robot is able to breathe during the opera, then they say, oh, it's like living creatures. So
but I suppose in humans, I mean, our perceptions of emotions and feelings, that's an interaction between chemicals, monoamines in our brain, interacting with our the networks of neurons and that system, that neural system of our own. So what would be, in terms of AI, how would we be able to develop systems of reward mechanisms that could lead to behavioral changes in an AI unit? Is there work done on that to somehow mirror or reflect how our bodies use very simple chemicals and their release in certain parts of our body to stimulate these responses? Are we doing something similar? Is there research work in that area?
Well, when it comes to neuroscience, and you are trying to get some insights about how, for example, the chemicals in the brain work and influence different areas, that's actually very complicated, and it's going for like many, many years. And I'd say that it's still not like very conclusive. Like in short, we still don't really know how the brain works. It's very hard to simulate even like individually neurons, and we have like maybe 100 billion of them in the brain. And now you also have like these extra chemicals, and you have the sleeping cycles and so on. It's very, very complicated thing, and it's a question whether in any foreseeable future we will be able to understand the brain to the point that we can talk about simulating emotions. I think that when it comes to this question, it's like interesting to think even like why do we people have emotions? Because it's also like interesting that not all of the people have emotions. There are, for example, psychopaths who don't have emotions, but they can mimic the emotions quite well. They can actually learn to pretend that they have the emotions, so they can actually deal better with other people.
But I think that's an insight into how these things do develop, because this is you get a spectrum of different emotional responses in say humans, in the species of human beings, because that's a sort of a trial and error development of an interaction between certain chemicals with certain neurons.
Sure. But I was trying to get to the point, why do we people have emotions? What do you think?
To try and form beneficial behavioral mechanisms, which of course, sometimes aren't beneficial at all, of course. But that's how I see it. It's a way to react to the environment. So you get some sort of change in the environment, and you have to have something which gives you the motivation to do something. These chemicals have found a sort of a completely random way of interaction, and then if it does work, then of course it passes on to the next generation, right? So I can imagine if the work that you're doing, for example, in how chemicals can react to certain environmental changes, could be a start to eventually, having systems, artificial systems, that is able by itself to modulate its behavior according to changes in. But I suppose if we do stick to these emotions, we accept how difficult they are to generate. Jana, would you like to interact more often with artificial emotions? Would you like to have robots with the capacity to level with you on an emotional basis, or do you think that would be a step too far?
I don't know, because as my colleague said, we don't know how human emotions work. So I would be afraid that this robot able to mimic human emotions is even more dangerous for me, because it's psychopath.
It's like artificial psychopath, yeah.
So I prefer, I don't know, some fur animal.
So a furry animal rather than a.
Then yeah, the artificial psychopath.
Like pretending that you have emotions, that sounds kind of scary. So yeah.
What do you think? What do you think, Jitka? What do you think Čapek would have wished for? Do you think he'd have liked to live? Do you think he would like to have lived now, and be at the edge of this sort of development and all these artificial intelligence systems, or do you think he would have looked back and reminisced on how it used to be?
The first generation of robots in RUR, they were without emotions, without feelings. They were simply like working machines, and even in the play is written that they don't need to have like motor doesn't need to have ornaments or something like this. Also, the robots, they don't need to have the ability to play piano and something like this. So they were without feelings, without emotions in RUR, the robots. And Čapek maybe in the end has shown that the robots, that new Eve and Adam, they had some feelings and emotions, and Čapek has shown how the robots were able to fall in love or feel that the animals have babies and how cute it is, and then there is something like maybe in the future the robots, they will be able to have.
I think so. I think ultimately their genesis will be linked to their development of emotions. And on that point, and with a great deal of emotion, it's my sad duty to say goodbye to all of you for here listening in. I'd like to say a big thank you to Jana, to Jitka, and to Tomáš with being with us. I hope you'd enjoyed our discussion. Do read the book, Robot 100. Of course, if you can speak or write or read Czech, do so now, or maybe wait a bit longer. You can get the English version, where you can read the entire original play and then these contributions from modern scientists and philosophers and artists about discussing the play. So all the best. Tune in next time, where we'll be back for another Czech Centre's Scientific Café. And in the meantime, have a pleasant summer. Bye-bye.